With the recent reveal of the goated 1.4 dev stream, we managed to get a sneak peek at the climax of Season 1 for Zinless Zone Zero, with this season revolving around the sacrifice. I took a deeper look into the dev stream and patch trailer to break down exactly what was happening, and I feel like I found exactly how 1.4 is going to pan out. Let's do a little recap on what's happened so far this season and how that plays in here. At the start of the game, there have been several mentions here and there of an election taking place soon, once by Nicole and once by the siblings when dealing with the hacker. While this seemed like a nothing burger at the time, this plot point picks back up in Chapter 2.5. But first, let's continue with Chapter 1. As the Vision situation continues on, we find out that Perlman, who was shown on TV with a woman, was actually planning on blowing up a ton of civilians and had trains full of fake public security officers to make sure that no one left the area. At the end of this, we find out that the woman on the TV with Perlman is seemingly the real mastermind, as she incapacitates Perlman and almost has the fake public security officers shoot all the civilians. Before this can happen, the news comes in to save the day. As everyone starts to get arrested, the woman known as Sarah slips away. Sarah is not her real name, but we'll get into that later. The Cunninghairs decide to represent the civilians in court against Vision and Perlman to help them get justice. Now, on to Chapter 2. Cunninghairs sent Belobog our contact, and they reached out to have us help them recover some smart machines that got lost in the hollows after updating their smart core. Once we find them all, we find out that one of the machines is receiving a signal/command from Horus Belobog to, quote, fix the seal. Horus Belobog was the previous president of Belobog Industries and is Koleda's father. Horus had mysteriously disappeared the day before the old capital collapsed, seemingly stealing money that was meant for building a prototype mech. After finding the signal that the machine was receiving, we find the prototype he created using other company funds as it's holding up a pillar. The sibling and Koleda investigate the inside of the cockpit and find bullet holes riddled all around, and they find a receipt showing that the money Horus supposedly ran away with was in fact paid to the company. After securing the prototype and putting the pillar piece down, a seemingly brand new type of ethereal bursts out of the pillar and is able to absorb the nearby machines, turning itself into an amalgamation of the tech nearby. It did also interact with the siblings' eyes, but this isn't really further detailed. It was then defeated by Koleda and Belobog using the prototype mech. Public security shows up shortly after to capture the corpse of the ethereal, and Belobog manages to recover a drive from the prototype mech that needs to be hacked into to see the contents. So, the siblings reach out to the Cunninghairs to find a contact with Rain, a notorious hacker on the internet. While the siblings wait for Nicole to find a contact with Rain, they head to Lumina Square to renew their license, and Belle almost gets run over by a car, but is saved by Qingyi and Zhuyuan. They explain that they are around the area to hand out flyers for a safety awareness event held by Bringer. He is the deputy commander of Public Security HQ in the Janus Quarter. We then get to see the situation that occurred after PubSec arrived on scene with the prototype and Belobog Industries. Bringer shows up with his crew, asking where the newly discovered ethereal is, and remarks on how this would look bad on his election. Remember the election I mentioned before? Yeah, this is where it comes into play. Bringer is running in the election and is doing his best to look as good as possible for when the election actually takes place. Zhuyuan tells him that they applied to have the corpse of the ethereal transferred over to Hand, which Bringer gets very upset about and asks that PubSec forensics team still handle the evidence collection. He then gives Qingyi and Zhuyuan the task to start passing out the flyers for the safety awareness event, in 6th Street specifically. During this, we run into them and help ask around if the residents of 6th Street would appear at the seminar, and we learn from General Chop that while Bringer was a loved figure in the past, and even had the title Hollow Hero for saving a girl before the fall of the old capital, he now seems to just be doing things for his own benefit to climb the ladder in power, and even cozying up to the Tops Alliance. The siblings ask Zhuyuan about it, and we learn that the girl Bringer saved back then was actually Zhuyuan as a young child. That's why she wanted to join the force in the first place. There's then a situation with give change from the 141 shop and a delivery driver, but upon further investigation, we learn that there is someone messing with vehicles using an EMP. Ji-Yuan and Qingyi chase after the criminal and apprehend him in a hollow, bringing him back for questioning. During the questioning, they learn the routes that the criminal planned on using in the following days. Since Ji-Yuan and Qingyi helped clear Give Change's name, the residents of 6th Street decide to join the safety event to show their appreciation. When the event starts, Qingyi notices that the routes the criminal planned on using were the exact same routes that the forensics team was supposed to be transporting the ethereal to hand. They check on the location of the truck and notice that the truck hasn't moved in a while, so Ji-Yuan and Qingyi decide to leave the event and bring her to go into the hollow to check out the truck. They went in alone, since they are now suspicious of a mole in public security, since the route the truck was taking was extremely confidential. After a long journey, they managed to find the criminals and get the evidence back, which we learn was transferred to Section 6 specifically, when Miyabi calls Ji-Yuan to catch up. Miyabi mentioned that they need to bring Ji-Yuan in for further questioning in the future. It then cuts to Perlman being kept inside a holding, as Sarah walks in and asks Perlman to confess to all his crimes in court, and she will make sure he gets the best treatment in prison. Perlman retaliates, saying it was her and the person she works for that convinced him to do it, and even went as far to admit that he has proof of their involvement. After hearing this, Sarah leaves the room and asks a person on the phone if they will accept Perlman's terms. We didn't get to hear what the terms were at this point, and the voice says, "He'll handle it." We'll come back to this scene later. Now, Chapter 3. The vision trial with Perlman is finally about to take place, and the Cunning Hares are getting ready to leave on the airship, but Nicole continues to get messages from Rain, the hacker needed for the Bellabog mech prototype we mentioned before, with blank texts. Worried, she quickly runs to the siblings to check into it, and Fairy manages to find that the messages were being sent from the Ballet Twins building inside the Ballet Twins hollow. Nicole allows us to take Nekomata, Billy, and Enby with us to check it out. Once they arrive, they notice that the hollow had actually shrunk a bit recently, which allowed the top of the tower to peek outside the hollow, allowing Rain to get signal and send messages. Once inside, we find the Victoria Housekeeping Company, and Koren introduces us. While conversing, Nicole calls and says that all of the Cunning Hares need to be present at the trial, so Nekomata, Billy, and Enby leave to meet up with Nicole for the court case, and Victoria Housekeeping help the siblings navigate the building to get to Rain. As they continue to the roof, it cuts to Perlman arriving at the blimp with PubSec handing him his briefcase, where we learn that Sarah accepted his terms and told him to open his suitcase 2 hours after the flight takes off. Billy and crew arrive on the scene shortly after, all being exhausted from running except for Billy, who bought a new air intake module off the black market, but after arriving can't seem to switch it back to intake mode. All parties board the airship and take off. After a long journey up the Ballet Twins Tower, we take down a group of criminals blocking off the route of the roof, and among their belongings, we find a hacking device and documents listing all of the timetables and routes for the airship that the court case is transporting everyone in. As this happens, Billy calls, saying that Perlman opened a briefcase and a gas was released that knocked everyone out cold, including the pilot. The only reason Billy didn't get knocked out was due to the fact of the intake failure on his breathing module mentioned earlier. He runs to the cockpit and mentions that the new path that the airship is heading on is straight into the Ballet Twins Tower. It becomes a race to save Rain and have her hack into the airship and change its path. After rushing through the upper floors and taking down the Ballet Twins ethereal, we manage to save Rain and make it to the roof, where Rain is able to quickly disable the jammers, allowing the airship to be manually controlled. Since Billy can't fly it, Lycan runs and jumps off the building and into the airship to land it safely. Everyone is taken off the ship, and the crew comes up with a plan to tell public security what happened, since Victoria and Rain shouldn't be there. However, after the plan is made, Perlman wakes up before anyone else and steals the airship, fleeing to the outer ring. Once everyone makes it back home, Rain gives the siblings the cracked data from the Bellabog prototype. She also mentions that she got mixed up in this due to being swayed by a large payment for a mission that the client refused to elaborate on. She also mentions that she was only kept alive because the criminal's employer wanted to know what she leaked and mentioned the sacrifice. The sibling called Belobog over to take a look at the prototype data. Inside were the final words from Hor's Belobog, and the person he fought inside the prototype explains that the ethereal inside the monument was called the Sacrifice. As Belobog and the siblings discuss what that could mean, it zooms out to show that Rena and Lycan know about the sacrifice, and their master told them to continue to help the siblings as they could become an ally in the future. Chapter 4. The Sons of Caledon come across Perlman as he crashes the airship and wakes up when Caesar mentions that they should contact the police. He begs not to be handed over, saying he knows who the mastermind behind everything is before passing out. It then cuts to Billy as he tells the siblings that he heard word from a biker gang in the Outer Ring called the Sons of Caledon that they managed to find intel on Perlman. They will give us info on him if we can help them with a commission. Billy vouches for the Sons of Caledon and mentions that he used to work for them. The siblings agree to go to the Outer Ring with Billy and take a special Sons of Caledon truck on the way there. Unfortunately, the drive did not go as planned, as Billy and the sibling are forced off the road by another driver, so they swerved into the nearby hollow. The driver of the truck falls out and has a discussion with Lucius, the second in command of another rival biker gang called the Vanquishers. This discussion reveals that Lucius is in talks with an ether company inside the city, and that this entire situation was to take down the Sons of Caledon. Little did he know, it was actually Billy and the sibling inside, not the Sons of Caledon themselves. Meanwhile, Billy and the siblings get saved by Caesar and Lighter. We return to their base and meet the rest of the Sons of Caledon, where we learn about the Torre de Inferno, which is a cross-hollow motor race that's put on to determine the overlord of the biker gangs. The first faction to make it to Cinder Lake and throw a spark stone in is declared the winner. They want the siblings to help them navigate the hollow this time around to ensure they're winning over the Vanquishers. We also learn that they have Perlman himself in their custody, and will hand him over when he is healed and awake. The Sons of Caledon and the siblings go on a long journey to gather data for the Hollow, and simultaneously attempt to find a traitor in Blazewood who is revealing the Sons of Caledon's position as they attempt to collect data and gear. This leads the siblings to meeting Pompey, the current overlord and leader of the Vanquishers. He explains the situation and that he had no idea that Moors had stolen the intelligence of the Sons of Caledon routes and sold the info, which is later further confirmed as Pompey is talking to Lucius, the man mentioned at the start of the chapter. Pompey says that Moors insisted that he acted alone, however heavily insinuates that he knows Lucius was the one who told him to do it. He also mentions that he heard Lucius was getting pretty cozy with some companies in the city. During this conversation, Lucius hands Pompey a drink and tells him that he will do better, but that he should relax for tonight so he's well rested for the Torre de Inferno the following day. As the tour goes on, we learn that the drink Lucius gave Pompey was a special drink that lowers someone's ether aptitude, making them more susceptible to ether corruption, and he kills Pompey by forcing him to turn into an ethereal. The Sons of Caledon take down ethereal Pompey and save Cinder Lake. After this whole debacle is finished, the Sons of Caledon are now the new leaders of the biker gang, and Caesar is the overlord. Lucius fled and is yet to be heard of since. Perlman is still healing but can't talk yet, so Caesar says that she'll give us the heads up when he's good to go. The siblings take their leave from the Outer Ring but make a stop at the Chasm where they reminisce about the past. Here we learn that the Chasm was created by detonating the old Shiyu pillars to stop or slow the spread of hollows into New Eridu, and that the siblings were a part of Helios Academy. Their teacher was named Carol Arna and is suspected to be one of the main causes for the fall of the old capital. As this is happening, Miyabi shows up to mourn the loss of her mother and says that she will stop at nothing until those who caused the old capital to fall are apprehended. She says this while staring daggers at the siblings. Alright, so that was a very brief recap of all the important connections that are in Season 1 that leads us to the conclusion of 1.4. If you'd like a more detailed version of each chapter, I'll leave my respective videos in the description. So now we can talk about my predictions in 1.4. Before I say who the sacrifice is in the 1.4 trailer, let's give some final clues that help me reach this conclusion. At the start of the trailer, we hear a PubSec officer say that Miyabi is being arrested for endangering the public, while there are also shots of Bell being held back by other public security officers. Later in the trailer, we also hear Zhu Yuan say, "We can't let him get away!" Now, I will admit, At first, I did believe that Perlman may have been the one that mutated into the sacrifice and technically was taken care of in the eyes of Sarah. But then in the 1.4 dev stream, they went a little into detail on some of the other factors in play during 1.4. One of those being the election. This is when everything clicked. Who is someone that fills every single mystery in the story? Someone who could supply Sarah a mass amount of public security outfits for the people in the train during the Vision debacle. Someone who had the power to get Perlman good treatment in prison. Someone who freaked out over the sacrifice being handed over to Hand and could spill the beans on the route that the public security evidence team took. Who could also manage to give Perlman the briefcase for the airship ride, bribe Rain to hack the airship route, and would have to hire someone to take out the Sons of Caledon in the Outer Ring since they have no jurisdiction there. And finally, who could frame Miyabi as a villain and act like he apprehended a powerful enemy before she could act, allowing people to want to vote for him even more in an upcoming election? Yep, it's Bringer. Not only does all of this make sense lore-wise, but his voice is very similar to the voice that talks to Sarah on the phone during the discussion with Perlman. Oh, and the icing on the cake? Look at the vest on Bringer, and the size of his shoulders. Now look at the sacrifice. Yeah, it's a one-on-one match. Now, as to why he fused with the sacrifice, we'll have to see, but I can only see it as desperation to cling to any sort of power that he can. Maybe he lost the election, or maybe Miyabi connected the dots, but either way, the sibling definitely contacts all of the factions involved to come help since every single faction has a connection to the sacrificed, as we mentioned. Zhu Yuwen will have to take down her hero, a man once named Hollow Hero, turned Hollow Mutant. I am crazy excited to see exactly how this all plays out in-game, and definitely to see the aftermath of it all as well. Do I think Bringer is the end-all, be-all bad guy? No, of course not. He was but a simple pawn in the hands of Topps, who Sarah definitely still works for. Over time, we'll see more connections to Topps, and who is truly at the top of it all. See what I did? Anyway, we even know that Topps is currently trying to create a version of the HDD based on our research from the past. So, who can we see as an enemy in Season 2 of ZZZ? Like I said, slowly we'll see more of the Topps in the background, but honestly I could see them taking a little bit of a break and maybe having the Order make a more prominent appearance, allowing the Obsidian Division time to flesh their faction out, since the Order were tied to the Obel Squad back in Eridu's time. We could also see the Mockingbirds make an appearance, since we know very little of them, but that Lycan has a huge connection to them. In fact, he was a member of them originally. There are plenty of routes that they can take with what they've set up so far, and I'm glad to be on the roller coaster as it continues on this crazy journey. Let me know what faction/enemy you guys would like to see more of in the comments below, and I'll see you guys on the launch of 1.4.